Hello, everyone. So, welcome to our session. So, today, right now, we have Thomas Liedtke, Senior Cybersecurity Manager at Magility Cybersecurity. Thomas will present on risk assessment along the supply chain from OEMs to tier ones and tier twos and how does it all fit together. In his presentation, Thomas will explore how risk assessments conducted by the suppliers at various levels must align with the overall vehicle Terra. He will discuss how to ensure consistency between customer cybersecurity requirements and those derived from supplier Terras and present approaches for structural integration. So before we start, I would like to remind the basic points. So please, on the right, so you can see the Q&A section, and don't hesitate to post your questions here during the session, so you don't have to wait till the end. And at the end of his presentation, so if time permits, so we will go through all the questions one by one. And in addition, so Thomas will be available after the session. I mean, after the Q&A session in the lounge. So if you still have questions to ask to him or not to miss this opportunity to maybe speak to him one to one and ask your questions directly, please go to the launches and join the room where he is in. Well, I stop here and so Thomas. So now it's yours.
So thank you, Kemal, for a nice introduction. Um, Good afternoon. Just starting the afternoon to all of you. I'm very happy and excited to be able to present something to you. And I hope there are some few ideas you can take with you or some new things you never heard before so that it is worthwhile to participate in the presentation. As said by Kemal, I will talk about if you have several towers in a project, not only one, but more, on different levels perhaps, and how can you face with that? What are the challenges if you have that, and how can you solve some problems about that? So I will skip that slides. It's just for you as an information. The company I'm working for, consulting company facing with cybersecurity, safety, and automotive spies I'm working for. And I've prepared, and of course, you see some things I did already. So it's not only theory, it's a lot of practice as well during the last year. So I will talk about real projects, practical projects, and everything is real. It's not only theory. I prepared the presentation together with Richard Messnertz from the ISCN. He's working in Graz in Austria, and it's a network of automotive spies assessors. So he is a certified training provider for automotive spies. And he's as well a lot through the world, see different projects, different real projects. He is consulting, he's assessing those one, and both together we prepared this presentation to share our experience and to share it now the view of what we have seen and what we want to provide to you as some ideas. It's 7 parts, so I will start about a typical distributed development. In the automotive, we know already the distributed development we are faced with, and in safety, you see it's with a development interface agreement, cybersecurity interface agreement. That means always you have typically from OEM to tier one a one-by-one relationship, and tier one to tier two, it's a little bit different. And this is what I will talking about as well. I will have or we will have a look at a TAR from OEM perspective. What are his purpose performing a TAR? Then we will have a look on a tier one level architectural TAR on a software level. Then just only a piece of consistency. How can you check the consistency of the different TARs if you have more than one in one project? And when once again to a typical situation we are faced if we come to a supplier or to an OEM, um, what are typical situations we supplier are challenged with, and how can we deal with their suppliers in the next level? And at the end, of course, a very short summary. Starting with a typical distributed development. On vehicle level, you will have some some functions, some features you know as a driver, as a user of your car. And this is what is provided by the vehicle manufacturer. So for instance, in that you have a hierarchy, ignition off command, then there's this door closing command, and there are several functions below of that: engine, steering lock, lightning, airbags, and others. And all of them typically are connected with real-time bus. And the ECUs are developed by different companies. So typically a car, you know it, it's an integration of different suppliers, different ECUs coming from different suppliers. So on vehicle level, the cybersecurity elements are the clusters of ECU. So there is no, the vehicle owner or vehicle manufacturer do not have insights in all the ECUs in a very detailed, but you know, I want to secure the functions I will provide in my vehicle. So for instance, if you see the hierarchy, you have an ignition off command that leads to a door command, and then it can activate different ECU functions like engine, steering lock, and so on. And as said before, these ECUs are developed by several tier ones, so not only by one. You know, the V model I've taken out from Automotive Spice. And you know, there's a system phase on the top and there's a software phase on the bottom. So it's just only a part, typically starting on OEM side. This one requirement as elicitation, typically done by the OEM, and the supplier will get some information in the SIS2 or SIS3. It's different from project to project. He will get some requirements. Vehicle manufacturer will perform a vehicle TARA on the concept level, for instance, clause 9 or MEN 7 in the ASPICE, and he will receive some and derive some cybersecurity specifications. On the other side, if he performed the vehicle TARA, he will identify and specify cybersecurity goals, and the cybersecurity goals have to be validated at the red leg of a V model. The tier one will start then to develop and depends a little bit SIS2, SIS3, and he will provide some developments in software. So software process one, two, and typically in a lot of projects, the tier one is forced to perform a TARA as well on his level. So it means there's not only one TAR at the end combined to one vehicle TAR, but there are several TARs. And one of them is the tier one TAR on system or software level. And we have a second boundary if, for instance, the tier one is bringing in his project a semiconductor or an AUTOSAR software package, then he will have another delivery in another supplier. And this is the tier two here in that sense. And perhaps the tier two supplier is creating another TARA. Of course, the big difference on that is that typically the tier one do have more than one customer, not only the tier one, but several, perhaps 100, 200, 300. That means he cannot perform an individual single TAR for each customer. He will create and develop the security element out of context, and we call it assumed TAR. That means he has to anticipate the requirements, the cybersecurity requirements coming from his customer later on. And at the end, in that picture, you have at least three TARs and three levels, and you have to have a look that they are consistent, when they are complete, and if they are fitting together. Let's have a look on the OEM level. So this could be an architectural drawing on vehicle level. And we take one example, a very simple one. Imagine if you want to protect your cars from being stolen, and we have in a steering wheel, we have a small bolt, and he will lock the steering wheel so that you cannot drive away with the car. And this is then a function, the ESCL should be the ECU. So this is the ECU, and this will be developed by another supplier, not by the OEM. The OEM, very high level, have some insights already. He know the trust boundary of a vehicle. So you know in cybersecurity, you always have to take into account different trust boundary levels. And you have a trust boundary on a vehicle. You have another trust boundary, vehicle internal network. And you have another trust boundary, our ECU, ESCL, we want to develop. And this could be one information, one drawing we vehicle manufacturer knows. So he knows the function, what should be happen on a functional point of view, but typically he do not know the technical implementation. It's up to the supplier how he will solve the technical problem on that. And of course, it's if you start with that, so the 2034 is telling you need a preliminary architecture to start a Tara. This is the preliminary architecture drawing to start a Tara on vehicle level. And this is then for it's steering the Tara. How is it working? Tara means and that the threat analysis and risk analysis or risk assessment, threat analysis and risk assessment, like HARA for safety. That means I need that in order to get knowledge about my cybersecurity requirements I have to implement in order that the vehicle will be secure at the end. This, for instance, could be one attack path the vehicle owner can think about. So from a mobile phone app, if you think about you can close your car from outside with your smartphone. And then through the antenna, the attack path will go. And then, for instance, to the telematics ECU, to the gateway server, to the domain controller through the ECU, and at the end, for instance, the motor, you will avoid that the bolt will be locked the steering wheel as an attacker so that you are able to steal the car. This is what the vehicle manufacturer can do. So that could be one table he is creating if we want to use the table-oriented one. The asset he want to protect is the ignition of command trigger relevant ECUs accordingly, in brackets, e.g. the lock with steering function. So this is what the vehicle manufacturer is thinking about. He can have a look on the cybersecurity properties, authentication, integrity, non-repudiation, and so on. We use that example because we want to apply the right attack type in order to find all the threat scenarios. And there's a direct one-by-one leak for authentication. The threat will be spoofing, integrity, tampering, non-repudiation, repudiation, and so on. So one adverse consequence could be physical inconvenience due to unexpected ignition of command while driving caused by a spoofed command at unintended time. That means you are driving on the street, on a highway, and then the ignition of commands will be sent out by the CAN bus, and then at the end, your steering wheel will be locked. This is worst case, and the damage will be some physical inconvenience. The threat scenario will be spoofing that command, spoofed ignition of command that leads to triggering of the ESCL function. Let's have a look on the next level. This could be an architecture drawing on supplier on tier 1 level. So it's a little bit more detailed. You see that with the item is the ESCL, and you see there's a trust boundary around, but you already see some more details. So you see the bolt protection, you see the three-phase stop motor, you see the power off switch, and so on. So we zoom a little bit in, and this could be the starting point to perform the TAR. The TAR and that is based on the architecture of the tier 1. Our example will still be the same. So the blue boxes here, A1, 2, 3, and etc., they are the assets I would like to protect. In addition on that, we see some data assets like speed limit, travel distance, stat motor, log file of last 20 commands, etc. This is already a very detailed view on that. So this is something you have to know because this can be tampered and then an attack can be realized later on by an attacker. So these are additional assets you have to have a look on. Let's have a look on the Tara table on the supplier level. The asset is a little bit different now. The asset is in case of lock command, the electric motor moves the bolt to a locking position of a steering column, brackets if validation conditions are valid. This is what the ECU will do. So the ECU will follow if a lock command will come, he will move the bolt and then the locking position of the bolt and the steering column will be reached. In brackets, this is important from my point of view if validation conditions are valid. Of course, there are some validation criteria by when the steering wheel are able to be locked or allowed to be locked. Once again, we have a cybersecurity property, authentication, integrity, and so on. And what you can see is the damage in the first step is the same as the vehicle manufacturer already identified. That means the physical inconvenience due to unexpected locking in that case of the steering column while driving, caused by a spoofed message. So it's not the command itself, but it is the unexpected locking due to the spoofed message to lock it. This is what the ECU will take care about. And you see, for safety, financial operability, the impact rating is severe. And for another one, availability, we said, okay, it's only negligible, because if you cannot lock your vehicle, it's a pity if it is stolen, but it is not a safety issue on that. So on that, if we have zoom on, physical inconvenience due to unexpected locking of a steering column while driving. If we go further, so let's assume that we perform the TARA in the next step, as mentioned by MEN 7 from ASPICE or clause 15 from ISO SAE 21434. We use the attack potential method. So at the end of the attack potential method, there's a total value, in that case 1542, etc. And this is created out of the five dimensions of the potential method. Just trust me, that is the outcome on that in our example. And you have to think about a high value means the attack feasibility it's lower, and a low value means the attack feasibility is higher. So you have to think in one direction. And what we see is we have, for instance, the first one was spoofed lock command. There's a risk value at the end for safety at 4, for financial at 4, operability 4, and privacy only 1, because privacy is not taking part in our game here. This is the ones where we see the risk values, distinguish between the different impact categories in order to be able to specify some controls directly addressing the risk source. So a control for safety can be different as a control for financial. And therefore, from my point of view, it's very important to know where the risk value is coming from in order to create or select the correct cybersecurity controls. So let's have a look what is the risk treatment decision on that. So it's reduce for all the first 3 lines. So we want to reduce the risk, and only one we want to transfer. On the 5th line, it's the lowest one. And you know, from a standard, you have to specify a cybersecurity goal in the case you want to reduce a risk, and you have to create a cybersecurity claim if you want to transfer, or if you want to avoid or accept, sorry, you want to retain a risk. So the cybersecurity goal in that case could be: the steering lock shall not react or work triggered by a malicious or spoofed lock command. This is phrased in the terms of negative passive. That means, like safety, what is not allowed to be happen in order to have a secure vehicle or secure ECU in that case. So it means it is not allowed that the steering lock will react on a spoofed command. This is our goal. That is what we want to achieve. The control we select for that could be message command authentication. Security control, it's in principle very general, so we are not specifying exactly how we will do that. This will come in the next step if we think about the cybersecurity requirements, but it's a general control. There are technically not so many different cybersecurity controls. You can sign something, hash something, encrypt something, but you have a list of controls. You can have a look if it is reducing risk you want to reduce in that case, and you want to achieve the goal. Have a look on the cybersecurity requirement. In that case, could be requirement 1. The lock command shall be authenticated using a message authentication code. That could be a requirement you have to implement in order to avoid that the steering lock will react on a spoofed command. Let's have a look on a software level. So now we are a level below. If we have, for instance, a data flow diagram available, and in your software architecture, you know you should have a static view, you should have a dynamic view, you should have a cybersecurity view, and one of the views is, for instance, a data flow diagram. So in that case, we are coming from a bus with a command to the sec or to the RTE. This is one communication path, bus RTE, and you see we have already some controls selected on that. And the data flow diagram has a big benefit that you can systematically create and select the cybersecurity controls out of that. For instance, if you need a ROM memory to store the software, you can say, yes, I have to have a signature on a code block. This is a cybersecurity control in order to ensure that you have the original authenticated software still in your vehicle and not the spoofed or tampered one. The same on the other one. So for instance, the parking mode limit. For sure, it should not happen that the bolt will lock the steering if you are driving more or faster than 5 kilometers, for instance, or 3 kilometers. So this has to be configured, and it is part of the configuration data, and it is the parking mode limit then has to be secured that nobody can tamper this value, so that it is still the safety measure you can use for cybersecurity. It's not possible to lock the steering if you are faster than 3 or 5 kilometers on that. For this, you can use an hash key. So you will hash the value, the parking mode limit, and then you can call the hash keys, etc. This is the input on that. Okay. Oh, it's not. Yeah, no, it's okay. There's a delay.
I cannot hear you as well. Can you hear me now again? I see you talking, but okay, I cannot hear you. Okay. Okay, so this is the software requirement on the lower level. So the speed limit parameter is valid and so on. That means all the things to be have a valid command will be checked on software level on that.
Well, I apologize for the situation. So apparently there is a connection issue. So I think Thomas is now totally disconnected. So I hope he will be back. Hey, Thomas, so could you hear me now? All right. So I don't know if we will have Thomas back, but we can. Ah, okay.
Okay, so you can hear and see me, so I can try once more
Y-
to share the
yes.
screen. Hopefully it will work.
All right. Well, in the worst case scenarios, Thomas, so we can start your video recording, but I think we are fine now.
Yeah, okay.
All right, please go ahead.
So on that slide, you see several checks you can perform or you have performed if you have several taras in front of you. The first one is with dependencies between the function of a component or scope of delivery. That means what are you delivering to the supplier? We will see on one of the next slides, typically you will have already some cybersecurity tagged requirements coming in from the OEM, for instance. That means we have several sets, and those sets, of course, they have to be consistent, and the dependencies you can check. The same as for the cybersecurity claims and the conditions to achieve a cybersecurity goal. The functions dedicated to addressing specific aspects of threat scenarios, targets for cybersecurity validation, and so on. That means there are several checkpoints you have to perform, and you have to ensure in order that you have at the end a consistent picture what you need for your cybersecurity case. Everything has to fit together. Um, Coming back to that, on the one side, you have the functions as a starting point. The function is an asset. Typically, the vehicle manufacturer is thinking in terms of functions. You want to sell functions. You should use functions in your car. So the function in our case was, in case of a lock command, the electric motor moves a bolt to a locking position or to of the steering column if validation conditions are valid. Then we had a look on a threat, the spoofed lock command. We had a look on a goal. We have a look on a cybersecurity control. And we have the cybersecurity requirements derived at the end. The lock command shall be authenticated using a message authentication code MAC. On the other side, we started with a data flow diagram, and we saw some assets like speed has to be protected, the lock request has to be protected, and we had the threat identification for the cybersecurity control, that it could be authenticated and it has to be validated. We had a concept, and at the end, we saw the software cybersecurity requirement were detailed if speed limit parameter valid and speed valid valid as well. So what we have to check at the end is if this is fitting together. So on the one side, we had a requirement derived top down from a function point of view. On the other side, we have created a function from on a software level here. So facing back to the typical situation, we are frequently faced if we are coming to a supplier. We receive, or the supplier is receiving a colorful mixed functions, non-functions requirements from a customer. They are typically addressing different levels of development towards coding standards to the lower level. Some bits exactly have to be like this, some architectural requirements or whatever. So it's a colorful mix. And then in addition, there's coming the request to perform an own Tara for his scope of delivery, in addition to the Tara the OEM has already. In typically the OEM, the vehicle manufacturer is not disclosing the complete Tara results. So you do not have an access on a Tara, like typically for safety, you do not have an access to a HARA from the OEM. So the cybersecurity requirements capture the implementation of controls from a vehicle manufacturing point of view. That means several requirements are already tagged as to be cybersecurity relevant. And the completeness has to be checked. And typically, you do not want to receive more cybersecurity requirements by performing your own Tara. So the Tara is performed typically, but it is not to create some additional cybersecurity requirements you do not want to have because it's creating some additional effort on that. So if you see on a picture, Tara level N, you have a cybersecurity goal, you have the cybersecurity controls and requirements, and from a customer, for instance, and the supplier to have the next level, Tara level N+1, the same. And in this section here in the left down corner, the cybersecurity requirements on the one side you can derive from cybersecurity requirements coming from the OEM, plus the cybersecurity requirements you have specified by performing your Tara. And those requirements has to be fit together. So what should you do? On the one side, you can confirm and prove the cybersecurity requirements received from a higher level, because you have already some requirements cybersecurity tagged, and of course you have to have a look if they are fitting together. Typically, you cannot prove the completeness because you are not aware of a complete TARA, but at least you can have a look on consistency, contradictions, etc. And on the other side, you have to identify new cybersecurity controls for your level performing your TARA, and then you have to merge them both together. Typically, the TARA is in parallel with the implementation already, because you want to start immediately as soon as you have the cybersecurity requirements. You do not want to wait until the complete TARA on your level is performed. So this is what we see frequently. It's done in parallel at the very beginning. The cybersecurity requirements you have already received, you have to take into account in your TARA, because these are already cybersecurity requirements you can use as one of the base in order to analyze attack paths or to think about threats. You have already some information. Okay, this we will skip then. So the combination and merging of TARAs at different levels is required. You have to specify cybersecurity goals on your level, and you have to validate them on your level. As soon as you have specified cybersecurity goals, you have to validate them. Frequently, we see on supplier side that they say we are not responsible for validation because we are not on the highest level. But if you have some own cybersecurity goals, then you have to validate them. And when there's a complicated requirement and phase 952 in the standard telling you how you can verify TARA and the results of them, and it's not quite easy to verify all the things, but it's a very good guideline what you can do. Summary and outlook, we had a look on the V model, a little bit on the vehicle TARA, on a tier 1 TARA. And now we have a short look on as an outlook for tier 2. How can we create assumed TARA, SEC, or C? So typically it's a one by many linkage fan out for him. He has a lot of customers. He cannot create a single TARA for each of a customer. And in addition, perhaps he do not know, the semiconductor producer do not know, is my semiconductor used in a braking system or a lightning system? The safety impact will be different if it fails. That can only be anticipated. So there are some assumptions he has to perform on that. If you have a look, what can be seen by him, then this table is showing that what are the findings in a tier 1 TARA and what can be some additional compared to the tier 1 TARA. And you see some more details. Let's take the operational environment. The secure communication activates by master software that can be seen on a tier 1 level, and on a tier 2 level, signature for one-time configurable data. This is, for instance, what can be provided by AUTOSAR, by a semiconductor or whatever. So it means there's already a level below where you have to think about what are the risks and what are the cybersecurity controls to be implemented. This is a list of references, and this is the last page, so I'm very excited about your questions. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for the presentation, Thomas. So, well, we had a small interruption. So we have, we have one question, so we can start with that. Well, I hope the questions will follow up. So, should the vehicle manufacturer always expect TARA from the supplier in case he already did one at the vehicle level? So it seems to me that clear cybersecurity goals defined by the vehicle manufacturer can be good enough to guide the supplier in most cases.
Mm-hmm. So the first part of the question, I would say no, and the second part, yes. So of course you do not expect always, or you cannot expect always, but it's what we saw in a lot of projects. It is expected that we own the vehicle manufacturer is expecting, and in some OEMs, perhaps they are already forcing that. So this is one of the requirement of their specifications, that you have to do it without any doubt. So whatever you're delivering to that OEM, you have to perform a TAR. If you have, you're right, if you have very clear cybersecurity goals, then you can think about if you can have a shortcut for your TAR. The problem is that it's a different level. How good is a vehicle manufacturer knowing your product, your insights? Do you know where you are storing a key, for instance, how you can protect the key? Is he already proposing if you have to use an HSM or not? Is it proposing you have SecOC or not? So sometimes it's only a proof that the cybersecurity goals are good enough, which are coming from vehicle manufacturer. I was in a project where a lot of signals has to be encrypted, and the supplier saw it is not possible to perform it in software any longer. He needs an HSM. But the HSM was not required by the vehicle manufacturer because the vehicle manufacturer was not able to perform all the performance tests. So it's not quite clear. It's perhaps where the world is colorful. It's not a clear yes or no for any case. But as if I would be a supplier, I would at least think about how good are the cybersecurity goals already by the vehicle manufacturer. How good is the vehicle manufacturer knowing my insights, and do I believe that at the end my ECU is secure sufficient that it can be used in a secure environment from a vehicle manufacturer?
All right. Thanks, Thomas. So let's go to the next question. Is there a necessity to incorporate lower level TARA from tier 2 MCU manufacturer, as an example, to higher level TARA, as an example, tier 1 ECU manufacturer?
Mhm. Once again, more no than yes, but if you use tier 2 product, an MCU manufacturer, can be a semiconductor, AUTOSAR, or whatever, of course you have to make sure that it is secure and you can use it in a securely manner. The minimum is that you will get a secure security manual by the manufacturer on tier 2, that you know what was done in order to achieve cybersecurity, what are the concepts, what are the controls, and are there any conditions for you as a tier 1, how you can use the tier 2 product in a secure manner. In the assessment, Richard and I, we observed frequent times that the supplier on a tier 1 level says, the product we bought by the tier 2, it's secure by definition. We didn't have a closer look to that because this to perform security is the duty of a tier 1. But how can you prove that? And this is the question. If you have a product where you have a very good security manual, a very good security concept, then you do not know by heart TARA, of course, but at least you have to be convinced that you can use it. And the TARA from a tier 2 is a good starting point. I see for a lot of tier 2 companies that are creating a TARA, at least a draft, and you can reuse for your level. But at least you get an impression of what the tier 2 producer or supplier already identified as the potential cybersecurity risk on that.
Thanks, Thomas. So I quickly jump to the next question. So if the supplier don't hand over TARA, how to manage? So maybe, well, if you don't mind, Gopal, we can extend this question. Not hand over TARA on time.
Yes, at least it's my experience in the experience from Richard as well, because the vehicle manufacturer typically want to keep it secret and confidential, the TARA, and therefore he is not handing over that. On the other way around, with OEM is frequently asking for the TARA, but my experiences in the projects seems that there's not too many comments on the TARA from a supplier. So if you shy a little bit and you say you do not want to hand over the way in the middle, it could be that you say, okay, we can have an insight, so you can have a look in it, but you will not get a copy. This is frequently one of the processes you can do that. And then at least the OEM can have a look on the TARA. Of course, he will be interested what kinds of assets did you identify, what kind of threats did you consider, etc. So from that point, you can understand the vehicle manufacturer do have a high interest in what you have done in the tar. But if you do not want to hand over the tar because you say it's too risky, then I would propose make a presentation with him, show him what you have done, and let him raise some questions. I was in such kind of sessions already, and typically there's not too many comments coming from vehicle owner. He only want to have a look that you've done it in a systematic, well manner, and that he increase his trust and confidence in that you have done a good job.
All right. Thanks, Thomas. So we go on quickly to the next question. So do you have experience using TAF between
Ah,
supplier and customer? So it's a new
There was
subject.
a presentation before about TAF. So TAF is not published so far.
Yeah.
I never saw request coming from an OEM that he was asking how effective your controls are. A lot of OEMs are already providing the requirements that we say you have to use that cryptography, you have to use a key length of that number of bits, so that the OEM is already sure that the cryptography you're using is secure sufficiently. But I never saw up to now that is in practice really used, that you will prove the effectiveness of your controls you have selected, at least not in numbers. Of course, you can argue that you say we have to introduce a logging mechanism and we are using this authentication control and should be effective sufficiently, and you can validate it, you can perform a bug bounty or whatever. But up to now, I did not saw it that it is done in a formal, structured way as we saw before, as it is now created in the TR 8475. So this will come up. But I know there are a lot of discussions of that. So I'm not pretty sure if it will be really become mandatory to use that. The community is still not agreeing on the same way. You know already the rating of attacks, etc. It's a little bit fuzzy already, so it's not very strict. And the same seems for the target attack feasibility. How can you really measure the effectiveness of a control in an objective way? It's not very easy.
All right. Thanks, Thomas. So time is running up and the questions are coming like rain. Well, don't forget to join the launch for the follow up. So I quickly jump to the next question. So will generalized impact categories and ratings handed down the supply chain to help usable TERAs back? Suppliers might else only rate feasibility but not risks due to missing details.
Yes. This you see especially on a tier 2 level. I saw that as well. So if a tier 2 supplier says, I do not know if my product is used in a safety-related environment for a braking system, for instance, or if it is used only for the windscreen and windshield, I just skip that. At the moment, I think there's not too much drawback on that, because the only thing you lose on that is the variety of risk levels. So you have a variety of risk levels from 1 to 5. And you skip the impact rating, the variety will shrink down because you will not have a variety in the impact. But on the other side, up to now, there's no forcement to say you what do you have to do if you have a risk level 5. Do you have to develop risk level 5 compared to a function risk level 1? There's no difference, there's no forcement. So the only thing then you have to have a look, if you only have risk level 1 or 2 at the end in a TAR, I would not accept that somebody is saying, okay, risk level 1, we will skip, we will not do anything. So this is the only thing I would have a look on it. If they skip the impact rating, the impact categories, or they skip the safety impact, for instance, because they don't know any information about that, but they use only the attack feasibility, why not? But you have to have a look how they are performing the risk treatment then. That it's not becoming too easy. That we say, okay, we do not have any impact, therefore everything is risk level 1, so we are fine. That should be not the argumentation in that case.
All right. Well, I apologize for not being able to receive any more questions because we have reached the end of the session. Well, please, I recommend you to go to the
Mhm.
lounge and ask your further questions directly to Thomas. So thanks for the participation and thanks you a lot, Thomas, for this wonderful presentation. Well, we apologize for the connection issues if we have a role on this.
Thank you. Thank you.